I wanted to just. Do you play the dragon with black?
I do. I play the dragon with both colors.
Oh, can you show us some stuff in the
Okay,
dragon?
we're going
Because
for the dragon now. We're going straight from the Spanish into the dragon. Okay, do we want to look at it from black's point perspective or white's perspective?
I would say black looks more sort of kind of aggressive and but whatever you prefer. But I would say if you show it with black,
Okay, let's
I
look
can
at
try
it. Yeah, we can do it from black. I'm usually more familiar with the white side, but I think it makes more sense to show from black side because people want to learn how to play the Spanish, right?
Okay.
Sorry, play the dragon. Sorry, play the Sicilian dragon. So people want to learn how to play the dragon. So let's give the people what they want. So knight f3, e4, c5, knight f3, d6. So there's actually a really funny quote. People ask me, how do you play the accelerated dragon? I said it's when your dragon goes zoom zoom. Because basically you skip the d6 move and you just go like with b6 and bishop b7, so your bishop goes zoom zoom. Yeah, but
yeah, I think there are two kinds of accelerated. One is accelerated dragon, where you go like move to knight c6.
Yes.
And then d4, cd4, knight d4, and g6. This is the accelerated.
Yeah, this is accelerated dragon. Oh, and the other one's the hyper accelerated dragon.
Yes.
So then
if you go to knight f3, g6 is hyper accelerated. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But
zoom is very.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't know how to explain it to people. People were asking me what's the difference between accelerated and hyper accelerated, and I'm like, well, the bishop goes zoom zoom. It goes there faster. So like, I don't know what people expected me to say. But yeah. Nice. Let's cover the regular dragon because okay, so the thing about accelerated dragon is that the positions don't even really look like a dragon anymore, so you kind of lose the core ideas of a dragon. So let's actually cover the accelerated dragon really quickly. So knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, and then here black G6. Yeah, g6, you know, knight to c3, bishop to g7, bishop to e3.
Instead of knight c3, there's one main move which is c4, right? This
yes.
bind.
There's also c4, which is the Marazzi bind. So actually, isn't it more accurate to play knight to f6 first and then knight c3 and then g6?
But how would you do that? Like
you can't do that because there's also knight takes. So instead of playing this is the part where I'm actually gonna ask for your help. So on move 4, if you play knight to f6, you're threatening e5, right?
Yeah, knight c3. No, not e5 because
sorry, e4. You're starting to take on e4.
Yeah, so knight c3.
Yes.
And then if you play g6, then I think this knight takes c6, b takes c6, and e5 could be uncomfortable.
Right. Okay, so this is why the accelerated dragon is actually not playable from that structure. Okay, so that's a mistake I actually often get into, is that I like playing the Marazzi bind, but I get very confused about when I can play the Marazzi bind. So actually on g6, then, you know, you can indeed play pawn to c4, which is the Marazzi. But more commonly, I think people play knight to c3. And after bishop to g7, there is bishop to e3 and knight to f6. Okay, so now the key difference is in the regular dragon, you play something like f3, right? As white. But you can't play f3 here, because this is going to lead. Yeah, I mean,
is there some trap here?
There's no trap right now, but after castles, white has to be very careful about what they play. So, for example, if they go bishop to c4, you're gonna get hit with that queen to b6 line. On move 8, and I have lost so many games to this. So now actually the move is bishop to b3. It looks like you're like, you know, it looks so complicated. Now there's knight takes e4.
So when you play queen b6, is there no kind of discovered attack from the knight moving to f5 and hitting your queen on b6?
Well, there is not, because you can play queen takes b2, which is a free pawn, attacking the knight on c3. as well as attacking the knight on f5.
Very nice, very nice. So therefore, bishop b3 now actually threatens knight f5.
It does indeed.
Ooh, okay.
But you know, black can also make moves, right? So a natural move here is knight takes e4, and then all of a sudden your whole center is falling apart. It is actually, if you play perfectly, I think it goes out to a draw, but what are the chances of playing perfect chess, right?
Yeah, I think, is it knight d5 now?
Yeah, it is knight d5 now.
Only move, right? Only move to play. Because if you take on e4 with the pawn or something, then bishop d4 and already black is better.
Yeah, bishop takes d4 and black is better. He's up a pawn, and you know your king is like out in the open. It's such a nightmare scenario, honestly. I mean, Chad seems to already know this trick, so we'll go over it quite quickly. But the only move is knight to d5, and then you have to play queen to a5, and then white has to play c3, and then black can play like knight to c5, and oh my god, it's just. It's just
knight c6 and knight e7, right?
Yeah. Knight c6, d takes c6, knight takes e7. You win your pawn back, but now your knight's stuck there. So now you have to play knight takes c8, and then all of a sudden you've played like 15 moves of theory for what reason, right? You don't even get an advantage out of it as white. So you definitely don't want to do that. Do not do that. So that's the key difference between the regular dragon and the accelerated dragon, is that white is actually not able to get this f3 move in. So you might be like, okay, but why? What difference does that make, right? Like, why can I not just go for an attack anyways?
Okay, just so on the 8th move, bishop c4, there is queen b6, you said.
Yes.
In the accelerated dragon. And instead of bishop c4, if you play queen d2, then there is a very powerful move for black, right? Over here. Because now queen b6 doesn't work.
Yeah, so actually, queen b6 doesn't work. You can play d5, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Exactly.
Yes,
exactly.
because you saved the move from playing d6. Yes. Now you get d5 with an extra tempo. So you're playing the regular dragon up a tempo, and that is incredibly strong. You might not think that one move makes a big difference, but one move makes a very big difference. For sure.
Yeah, cool.
So here, that's why you can't play f3, and you have to play a move like bishop to c4. I personally like bishop to c4 on move 7 for white. You're just stopping the move d5. Once again, we're just going with the regular ideas of controlling the center. So then black can play castle, and white can play, for example, bishop to b3. And this is an important move in a lot of different dragon positions, because you're just trying to not get, tricked in the center with knight takes e4 and all these crazy ideas. But the idea here is that actually white does not get a castle long. So after d6 now from black, if you're still trying to go for castling long with like f3 and stuff, well, that's just a little bit too slow, because black can immediately go with knight to a5, for example. Just so many things that make this a little bit too slow. So usually what happens is white plays h3 in order to stop knight to g4, and after, for example, bishop to d7, just castles on the king side, and you get this kind of a little bit more positional style, even though it is a Sicilian.
Very nice, very nice. So basically, if you want a very sort of a quieter dragon, then you go for the accelerated one. If you want more aggressive one, then you go directly for d6 on move 2.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, I didn't know this thing that 9th move f3 in this final line that we were looking at is not very effective. I thought it just may transpose, but as you said, knight a5.
Yeah.
And queen d2, and maybe you just take on b3.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing about this is, if you play f3 and your opponent is kind enough to play d6, this does go back into the main Yugoslav line of the dragon. The Yugoslav dragon will show in a little bit. But it's characterized by having the light squared bishop on c4. There's two main lines in the dragon, the Yugoslav and the long castle line, which I don't remember if it has a name, but in the long castle line, your bishop stays on f1. In the Yugoslav line, your bishop goes to c4. So basically here, if you play f3, d6, queen to d2, move 9, then black has knight to a5 after bishop to d3. You can play bishop to d7. The light square bishop for black usually just stays on d7. There's no really any better square for it. It
How
does.
did you get this to this position on move 7 castles?
Sorry,
for
no.
black?
On move 8 f3.
Okay.
Yeah, d6, queen to d2, knight to a5, bishop to b3. You can play bishop d7. You don't have to take the bishop straight away because that bishop isn't going anywhere. But if if white chooses to long castle in this situation, I think you can just start playing you could go rook to b8, play b5, and then knight to c4 really fast, or you can just take on b3, and I think it's just not a great position. Well, it's not the best position you could have for white. Yeah. So yeah, this is also called the Chinese Dragon. Man, there's some experts here in the chat who know all about theory.
Yeah, this rook b8 move is known as the Chinese Dragon.
Yes, that's the line I used to play in the Dragon when I played black. It's such a long time ago too. I mean, I went through the phase of being a Spanish player and then playing only Sicilians, and then I went back to playing Spanish only. Now I play a bit of both, but I like the Rouser personally a little bit more for black than the Dragon.
Oh, you play this knight c6 Sicilian.
I play the classical Sicilian, yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's also what Vidit loves to play.
Oh really?
He has played it his entire life.
Michal Marin taught me the Rouser. So
he in person or from the chess-based DVD?
in person, like he was my personal coach for.
Oh really?
Yeah. I've been coach. Yeah, Michal Marin is one of the best. Obviously one of the best theoreticians, coaches, all that. He's really
how
cool.
did you learn from him? Like, did you go to Romania to learn
No, it was
from
just
him?
it was just via call. Yeah. I mean, he has a very positional style of playing chess, which unfortunately did not suit me for the long run. But I think the Rouser was a very good opening for me. For me, it's a really good opening for me now, which is ironic because back then when I was 14, it wasn't a very good opening for me. But when I'm 21, I think it's a lot better because now I'm a lot more patient. I'm happy playing those end games in which I'm better. I think it's just overall so much better. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is something just for the chat to know what Rouser is. After e4 c5, knight f3 d6, d4 cd4, knight d4, knight f6, knight c3, and knight c6.
Mm-hmm.
This is the most logical move, but of course the main opening at top level nowadays has become the Najdorf with a6, but knight c6. Why do you think is not so popular at top level, Nemo? Why do everyone keep playing the Najdorf?
Okay, so it might sound a little bit contradictory because Najdorf has a lot of theory too, but the Rouser is pretty much a solved opening until move 50. If both players
till move,
it's solved until move 20 or something. I know theory until move 22, and that's me,
I thought if you said 50.
Yeah, 50 is an exaggeration for sure, but pretty much people know it until move 20, and I'm just okay, well, the good news is at my level people don't have that much time, right? But I think at higher levels it's just the lines are simple enough that you can kind of remember all of them, and it just ends up becoming the same variation over and over again, and then it just becomes into a draw. If you play perfect chess, by the way, guys, the games are usually a draw. Yeah. So
chess is a draw.
Yeah, exactly. Chess is a draw. You heard it here. Anish Giri would be very happy about that too. But yeah, the point is that if you play, knight to c6, you're going into the classical. If you play a6, you're playing to the Najdorf. Now, there are downsides, upsides to both. Playing to the Najdorf means that your opponent can pick between 10 different variations that you probably have to know. If you play into the Rouser, there's really only 2 variations, but the good news is that your opponent probably doesn't know it because it's such an old line and people are usually more about the hype lines like Dragon and Najdorf. But at the same time, hey, it's not covered in the DVD, but I think the Rouser is actually a really good opening in a Sicilian if you want to throw your opponent off guard.
Yeah. There's something that you could cover it maybe in
Mm-hmm.
future because it's one of your favorite openings.
For sure, for sure. I've started playing it a little bit more these days because I've gotten a little bit tired of playing Spanish over and over again. But yeah, let's go back into the dragon, which is how this whole conversation started. So once again, e4, c5, knight to f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, um, knight to f6, knight to c3, and then you go g6 here for the main line of the dragon. Okay, we're not going to cover the a6. We're not going to cover the Najdorf today. That will take at least 2 years to do that. And I just don't think we had that much time tonight, you know? So we're going to cover the dragon, which also has a lot of lines, but I think the dragon ideas are a lot more simple because the pawn structure is always the same. Whereas in the Najdorf, pawn structures can become very different.
Right.
So here,
So G6, and they call it the dragon because of like the structure of the black pawn. Is it like it
yes,
looks like a dragon?
yeah, it looks like the
And the
dragon
pawns on
constellation.
A7. Oh, it's is there some that constellation of stars?
Yeah, it's
There's
the
something
constellation
known
of
as.
stars.
Oh, I
Yeah.
thought it's because it's like the H7, G6, F7, E7, D6 is like the face, and the A7, B7 pawns like the tail of dragon. No,
Oh. No,
maybe
I
it's
think
not
I
then.
think it's apparently just straight up the Draco system, the Draco
Ah,
stars constellation. Yeah, which is pretty
got
cool.
it.
Yeah, it's after the stars, but I mean, the lore of chess openings is really fun for sure. So here, white plays bishop to e3. Usually, you can go bishop g7. If white plays bishop to e2, then this is the quieter dragon line where they just go short castle and
Classical, yeah.
yeah, the classical. But usually people will be a little bit more aggressive. I mean, if you want to play a solid opening, why play the dragon as white? Just go into like something else, right? So
Yeah, play knight f3 first.
yeah, play knight f3 first move. Exactly, exactly. But I mean, sometimes you have no choice because your opponent plays a dragon. But if you want to play something non-confrontational, play a very slow game, go bishop e2. But if you want to play something a lot more aggressive, you play f3. So then after that, you can go kingside castle, and then here white plays queen to d2. And the idea of this move, queen to d2, is to be able to play bishop to h6 at some point. It also enables you to long castle next move, and it's just overall the perfect place for you to put your queen.
Right.
Yeah. So here, I played knight to c6. And actually, there's a very interesting line here with g4, which is what this is a newer dragon line. Traditionally, I think long castle or bishop c4 are the main lines, but I believe in recent years people have started playing g4 a little bit more. Now, please do correct me if I'm wrong. Because I am definitely not like the dragon expert, but g4 is a very interesting line. And
this but as you mentioned about this Spanish bishop g4, and I'd asked my coach back then, this g4 is one more thing which my coach had mentioned back then, was
Really?
that when white plays g4,
Yeah.
you can put your bishop on e6 straight away.
Yes.
And I don't know how much sense it makes, but the point is that if he takes knight takes e6, f takes e6, now that the rook opened up on f8, it actually attacks the f3 pawn, which is slightly is backward because of the move g4.
Yeah. I mean, I remember learning this opening back in 2014. But usually do not want to take on e6 with a knight. It actually is one of the main lines. So knight takes e6, pawn takes e6, and there is just so much theory here. You go castle, and then all of a sudden there's like knight to e5, bishop to e2. I honestly cannot remember all the theory off the top of my head. It's been years and years since I last played this. But I think one of the main lines is to actually not to not take the bishop on e6, even though it's playable. You can just go long castle straight away, and black probably plays knight takes d4, and after bishop takes d4, it's not overly great for black to play that, actually. So wait, what's the move here? I don't remember this. I honestly don't.
You mean after g4?
Yeah, after g4, bishop e6 is the main move, for sure.
But there's also knight takes d4, bishop d4, and bishop e6, right?
Pardon?
After g4, knight takes d4, bishop d4, bishop e6.
Yes. There is... Wait, so you mean on move
9?
Move 9 instead of bishop e6, there's also knight takes d4. Yeah, but this line is not that good because you actually alleviate a lot of pressure in the center by swapping off the knight and helping your opponent's bishop get to a better square. Yeah. There are a lot of different variations in this, and I mean, this can go on for days, but I still want to get back to like the main ideas, the core ideas of the dragon. I think that's very important. So I mean, white here has a choice between bishop to c4 or long castle. And with bishop to c4, this is called the Yugoslav, and traditionally, you know, you go bishop to d7. This looks a little bit like the Sicilian Dragon we looked at earlier. White goes long castle. You can play rook to c8 or knight to e5. Both moves are perfectly possible. But the idea at the end of the day always becomes you want to attack on opposite sides of the board.
Right. Yeah.
So
very aggressive.
Yeah.
And now there's a big threat, right? After rook c8, if you start with h4, it's actually a losing move.
Yes. So after rook to c8, if white plays move 11 h4, then you have knight takes d4, and your bishop is actually unprotected. So black wins that bishop. And that's why white has to play bishop to b3, just retreating that bishop. And black's idea is fairly simple. You want to go knight to e5, knight to c4. In the dragon, for white, the most important piece is the dark squared bishop. So as black, what do you want to do?
After bishop b3?
After bishop b3, black wants to go for the dark squared bishop, right?
Oh, how?
Because the dark squared bishop is white's most important piece. Because that bishop decides whether or not you can go to h6, take this dark squared bishop that black has on g7. So you definitely want to be playing these kind of structures very carefully as white. You would always rather give up your light squared bishop over your dark squared bishop because you need that dark squared bishop for that kingside attack. That's super important.
So knight e5?
Knight to e5. You can play h4, you can play king b1. I personally like king b1. King b1's like one of those safer moves. Okay, so now when black plays knight c4, you have to play bishop takes d4, right? Because dark squared bishop...
you don't want to give this bishop.
Exactly. Dark squared bishop more important than light squared bishop. Rook takes c4. And then white plays g4. And how do you decide whether or not to play h4 or g4? How would you do that?
I was thinking if you go h4, black will go h5, and then to get g4 might be tougher, so you first start with g4. Does that make sense?
Exactly. That is 100% correct. 100% correct. This is a mistake I see a lot of people make. People just push whichever pawn, and they're like, okay, this will be fine. And then all of a sudden their opponent responds with h5, and they're like, wait, where's my attack? So it's really, really important to actually push the correct pawn.
Right.
Okay, so there is going to be g4 here, and black plays b5.
Okay.
And is it b5 here actually? So the idea is that you can't take on b5 with your knights, because after knight takes b5, bishop takes b5 or queen b8. Bishop takes b5 and then queen b8, and this attack becomes very strong. It might look like you're winning a lot of pawns, but you're actually weakening your king side by
and with
letting
that bishop on g7 looking at b2, it could be very dangerous.
Exactly. This bishop on g7, this queen on b8 are aimed straight at white's b2 pawn. So you don't want to take on b5. However, white does have this move pawn to b3, and then you can go rook to c8. I don't want to go super in-depth into dragon theory because once again, it's going to take about 200 years.
Yeah.
But the idea is that here, you know, if white just plays something like, just you want to continue your attack, right? So black wants to play on the king side, push up a5, push up a4 sometime, maybe play b4, go play around the dark squares now. White wants to play h5, h4, bishop h6, and then eventually swap off.
Right. Yeah, it's a very exciting position.
For sure. This is definitely one of the more exciting lines. So let's go back to actually, instead of bishop to c4, what about long castle? Because long castle is also a move. And the main move here for black is d5. And this goes into a line that I'm just like, oh my god, this is pure theory. You have to know it. But I have one idea for you here. Have you ever heard of the move? Have you ever seen the move queen to e1?
I have seen it. I mean, but I used to think that there's this move instead of queen e1, knight takes c6, pawn takes, e takes d5, knight takes d5, knight takes, pawn takes, and queen takes d5. And you know, if the queens get exchanged, nothing like it. You will be pawn up in the endgame. But then black players start to play like what, queen c7?
Yeah,
there?
queen c7, there's queen takes a8, now there's bishop to f5, and all of a sudden you have to give up your queen for the rook because there's queen takes c2, checkmate, so queen takes f8, king takes f8, rook to d2. This line goes on for
Who's better here?
It's actually equal. So objectively speaking, the position is totally equal. I do favor black's chances though. I think I like black's chances more. I mean, but this is obviously a little bit more of a personal opinion because I've never played this line as white. I've only ever played it as black. And playing with two rooks versus a queen is not a combination you usually get. So I think most people would be better at playing this with black. But the position is objectively speaking equal. However, I would advise avoiding this line unless you want to play really theoretical endgames. Like it's just too difficult. I think it's just too difficult. That's why I always recommend people to just go queen to e1.
Okay, and the threat is to just unleash your rook against the black queen.
Exactly. Now the rook is against this queen, so now there's actually a lot of threats that white has. So black here can play either e5 or e6. I don't really like the move e6 for black because it just ends up being a little bit too passive. White can immediately go h4 and start this attack. And because your center is a little bit undermined right now, since you have your queen facing the rook, it's a pretty uncomfortable position because you have to play moves like queen c7. Your opponent can just go h5, and you can see that, you know, on move 12, he's already got pawn on h5, and you have none of your pawns aimed at your opponent's king, right? So
true. So e5 might be better than e6.
Exactly. So e5 is probably better than e6 because you don't want to be stuck in a situation in the Sicilian, in the Dragon especially, where your opponent already has a pawn aimed at your king and you don't have anything out yet. Yeah. So here after e5, knight takes c6 is the main move because otherwise if you go anywhere else, there's d4 ideas. So b takes c6, e takes d5, and here black should take
play knight takes.
Yeah, with a knight. And the reason for that is if you play pawn takes, there are moves like bishop to g5, and then all of a sudden you struggle with protecting your d5 pawn.
And if you push d4, maybe queen takes e5.
Yeah, queen takes e5. It's a very painful position for black to play. I do not recommend this.
Right, got it.
Yep. So playing knight takes d5 is the main move here. Now white plays bishop to c4. We just want to keep attacking the center, right? Chess is simple. You develop your pieces, you attack the center, you control the center, and that's it. That's the whole game.
Right. Yeah. So bishop c4 and maybe bishop e6. We also control the center.
Exactly. Bishop to e6, we control the center as well. And now white plays knight to e4. And the idea behind this move is actually kind of crazy because you're actually you're preventing black's queen from going to g5 because you want to play bishop to c5. But on move 14, if you play bishop to c5, immediately there's queen to g5 check. And after king to b1, there's knight takes c3 or rook f to d8, and then all of a sudden this queen on g5 is attacking your g2 pawn and threatening to take that, and this becomes really uncomfortable.
Got it.
So instead of that, white should be playing knight to e4 in order to stop the queen from going to g5 in the first place.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
And this is very complicated, right? I mean, I've seen these games, and I don't know what black is aiming for, what white is aiming for, but it's very concrete, right?
Yeah, it is very, very concrete. So white, take a wild guess at what white wants to aim for.
maybe going into an endgame.
No, actually, it's not to go into an endgame. You actually want to play h4 and g4.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you do actually want to play h4 and g4. You're still trying to go for the attack. Meanwhile, black is actually, I believe, happy with the endgame because somehow these structures just end up being pretty okay for black. I think it's because of the open b file, but the idea is obviously for black that they just want to be putting the rook, well, not right now onto b8, not after knight to e4. After knight to e4, you have to play queen to c7, because then if bishop to c5, you want to play rook f to d8 to be putting this rook on the open file. And now white actually does play g4. And now black has to play pretty much knight to f4, just trying to swap off the bishops. Like, if you have less pieces, if your opponent has less pieces, the less chances they have to attack you, right?
Right.
So this is a very mechanical opening until a certain level. Once you start swapping off the pieces, so on move 17, actually bishop takes e6 is the correct move. Knight takes e6, and then you just go bishop to d6, and after queen b6, white wants to play h4. And
Nemo was saying, like, I'm not going to go through all the entire 20-30 move theory, but here we are, going through that.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. But the idea is that...
but it's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's the openings are insane. I haven't done this in such a long time, so I actually really wanted to thank you for, getting me back into it, because when I talk to my chat, they're like, yes, of course, and they don't really get what's going on. But I'm talking to somebody who is even better than I am in chess, so it's just it's a fruitful conversation. Not saying that chat is bad at chess or anything like that, but they're definitely not international masters in chess.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm the one who's learning a lot from today, especially all these lines, because these are some of the openings that I haven't played much. Because I write a lot and because I cover a lot of events, I've seen these games and these lines, but never really studied them as a player for my repertoire. So
yeah,
it's very, very useful.
I'm glad that I can actually show you a few of my favorite tricks. I mean, obviously, we all have things that we are better, openings in which we're a lot more knowledgeable of, and I would never show somebody a totally novel opening. But I mean, in this position, after queen to b6, the idea is pretty obvious. Black just wants to play a5, a4, a3 at some point, maybe rook a7, rook to b7. You just want to go for the king, somehow push this knight off e4, and white just wants to play h4 and h5. So it becomes a bit of a king side attack again, but this one I think actually can become even messier than the normal dragon because of the center being so open.
Right.
Yeah. All right, so do we want to dive into a d4 opening?
Okay.
Yeah, we can probably aim to cover... Yeah, this will be the last one.